Are you looking at cutting your health insurance premiums by as much as 20 to 30%? Are you aging into Medicare and need help finding a Medicare supplement plan? Call Drew Moak of USA Benefits Group at 601-953-8449. Drew is an Ole Miss grad located in Mississippi and licensed in 7 states. He works with the nation's second largest health insurance brokerage with access to 35 different carriers, and he can help you with any of your health insurance needs. From regular health plans to life insurance to dental and vision and even Medicare, he has it all covered. Now more than ever, it is critical to have a health insurance agent who is local and accessible. So call Drew Moak at 601-953-8449 and get your free quote today. Welcome into a special edition of Talk of Champions, as it was a big Monday for Ole Miss and the Grove Collective, and who better to have here on the show to discuss it than Andy Wittry from On3, sports business reporter. I mean, we were talking about it before I hit record. Just a remarkable day for Ole Miss and the Grove Collective on Monday, as they raised $1.7 million for NIL deals for Ole Miss athletes. I mean, first of all, welcome to the show. I'm still in shock that the number is that big.
Thanks for having me, Zach. Happy to be here. And you're right. It's a pretty impressive number for a single day, right? It's a 7-day campaign. They're hoping to raise $3 million. And to get more than halfway there in the first 24, it's really, really impressive.
It's yesterday was remarkable. It was a pretty cool setup. I joked on our podcast yesterday with Ben Garrett. You can find it, the Talk of Champions podcast network. Go give it a listen. I joked that it was like an old school like telethon where Walker Jones was on set with David Kellum, the voice of the Rebels, and they were having different coaches on and just talking about the fundraising campaign. And yeah, it just kind of felt like an old school, all hands on deck, everybody answer the phones and take, donations and whatever. But it was a cool setup. They had all the coaches come on and just talk about, the whole goal and the campaign and what they're raising money for and all of that. But, as you said, they're over halfway there. And you had a chance to talk to the Grove Collective's executive director, Walker Jones. I mean, what was that conversation like with him? I'm sure he was ecstatic and excited, but what was the overall impressions from him?
Yeah, I talked to Walker this morning, and to your point, they're still fundraising, right? There's still 6 days left. So he was talking about, we still have stuff today. We have stuff on Wednesday. We have stuff Thursday. So it was a bit of a breather to look back and really, I think, celebrate their success fundraising yesterday. You mentioned that old school telethon flavor of, the flashing phone number or this email address to contribute, having kind of the carousel of guests come on. So he was really pleased. He really credited the alignment. I feel like we speak so much about alignment these days. It feels like we work at tire discounters, right? But talking about collectives and the school and the fundraising arm. And really, when you have all those parties working in the same direction, is that, you had the Ole Miss Athletics YouTube channel. They're the ones that hosted this on YouTube. Their school website, they promoted it. So this wasn't a case of competition for donors or strife and infighting. Is it they were really rowing in the same direction? And Walker credited the school, the athletic department, the athletic foundation. And I think that's what it takes to have an event like this and to raise $1.7 million in a single day.
I did see something that was an interesting quote, and I think it really resonates here, not just for the sake of the Grove Collective in general and the football program and being in the SEC. We talk a lot. We answer questions on our message board and on Twitter, and we talk about it on our podcast all the time when it comes to recruiting, and especially college football recruiting. That's the big money maker. That's that's what everyone is here for the most part. College football recruiting, college football, like that is the life force of the SEC. And life around Ole Miss. And Ole Miss is at a disadvantage. It's a small school compared, relatively compared to other programs in the conference. Now you're adding in Texas and Oklahoma, who are both bigger, and seemingly the collectives are going to have more people, more bodies, more. The fan bases are bigger, the alumni networks are bigger, but Ole Miss is, I mean, they're holding serve. I mean, they are countering with haymakers here in the NIL space. And look, it paid off over the weekend. They get the top prospect in the state of Mississippi. Camarion Franklin stays home. He commits to Ole Miss. NIL played a role in that. But in terms of that, like the full body of work of the Grove Collective and Ole Miss having to combat, numbers and being creative. Lane Kiffin always uses the term, creating another box and thinking outside the box, creating another box. And yesterday he basically said, hey, this is your team, Oxford. This is your team, Ole Miss. Like, you get to own it. You get to contribute and help, usher it into this new era of college football. Is that something that you think Ole Miss can legitimately not only hang in there with the bigger collectives and the bigger fan bases, but thrive?
I think so. There's no reason that they can't. At this point, there's no leaderboard, there's no standings of which schools have the most money. I know you and I were both at SEC football media days this summer, Zach, and Lane Kiffin was asked by a Texas-based reporter, can you essentially rank the boosters in the conference? And Lane said he wanted to, right? But he said, I've learned, I've matured. I don't need to answer every question I'm asked.
Yeah.
But I do think if he were to rank, or whomever that had this all-knowing insight were to rank them, I don't know exactly where Ole Miss ranks because no one has all that data publicly. But I think they'd certainly be competitive, right? I mean, for Walker
Mm-hmm.
Jones, the executive director of the Grove Collective, to say, you know what, we raised 10 million. They announced that last November, and he told me this morning. He said that we'll be in that same neighborhood for this year, but it might be 5 or 10% higher. So we know that this current era probably isn't sustainable. It's not going to last forever. But as long as this current NIL era does exist, Ole Miss has been very competitive, to your point. So I do think when you've hit that 10 digit, that 10 figure number, is that's going to rank in the top echelon of the entire country. So you're right. Is it Texas and maybe A&M and certain schools, if they're operating at the full capacity, firing on all cylinders, they might have a higher ceiling than almost anyone else in the country. But Ole Miss, they're certainly in the mix in a very, very strong way right now.
I saw in your conversation with Walker that he mentioned, they had a coaching change that they had to, allocate resources for. Chris Beard, one of the more respected, successful coaches in college basketball, is now the head coach at Ole Miss, and he's trying to rebuild a roster to compete and get to the NCAA tournament, get to a Sweet 16, get to an Elite Eight. That's a place that Ole Miss has never been. The Sweet 16 was, when I was not even in grade school yet. So he's trying to get Ole Miss to that level. And then Ole Miss baseball, you talk about the big three with football, baseball, and basketball. Ole Miss baseball wins the national championship a couple of years ago, struggled mightily this year, but with those head coaches, Mike Bianco is the longest tenured guy in the SEC. Chris Beard, super successful, been to a national championship game when he was at Texas Tech. And then now Lane Kiffin, who won 10 games in the regular season for the first time in school history a couple of years ago. I mean, as good a big three, core of coaches in the country. But in terms of, sustaining that success, because that's what I've mentioned that before. And you're the business guy. You're the NIL expert here. I'm not. I've said that I've cautioned Ole Miss fans that, hey, they might have a run of some really good, recruiting success stories where NIL was a huge factor in landing someone. And, basketball, they just got John Bull, who's the highest rated commit ever in the history of the program. Ole Miss, are they going to be able to sustain that success and this level of commitment and fundraising? That's my question. Is that something that Walker Jones and them have kind of addressed or at least planned for in the future, to your knowledge?
I think there's two ways to answer that. The first answer, the gut reaction is yes. Walker, I think, has one of the best reputations in this space in the entire country. When you talk to collectives, pick a conference, pick a geographic region, may not be in the SEC, may not even be some direct competitor. But I think people look to Walker and the Grove Collective nationally as someone that's really experienced, really professional, really talented in this space. So I will say his reputation, it's one that comes up in numerous conversations, Zach, where it may not even be about Ole Miss or about the Grove Collective, but people find a way to mention Walker because that's what people think of him. They think that highly of him. So I will say that they have done a good job looking for business partnerships, right? When we talk about the different buckets of, the fans that give 10 or 20 bucks a month, the big whale donors that might write checks of 6 or 7 figures. And that third bucket is your business partnerships. Could be local businesses, could be national. So they've partnered with Wheels Up for some travel deals. There's a gaming partnership. And when do you find those more sustainable business avenues where it's not per se tied to, the wins and losses and did we win on Saturday? If the business sees a real ROI and a real investment, sure, they obviously hope that Ole Miss wins, but if they don't, it's not like they're going to cancel that next Monday, right? So I will say that I do think that Walker, given his background, given their partnerships, they found a model that, at least for now, and then for sure the short term, seems sustainable. But I do think your larger point about how long can this last? Will there be a downswing? I think it's a fair question for any fan base in the whole country, right? Not just Ole Miss. So regardless of what conference or what standing, at some point, it's like, all right, well, what if we lose too many games in a row? Or so-and-so decommits, or our coach, like those apply to everyone. So I will say if there is that insecurity or that lingering question, it's not a unique question to Ole Miss because it's really the whole industry right now, Zach.
We've all been there before. A weekend trip to the casino canceled because real life came calling. Well, MyBookie's new and improved online casino is here to change the game. Dive into a truly realistic casino experience featuring the latest in slots, progressive jackpots, and live dealer action, all from the comfort of your own home. Take advantage of weekly blackjack tournaments and a brand new collection of high-end games for a chance at real cash rewards. The MyBookie Casino provides a Las Vegas experience when the action's in your hands. And the best part is you don't even need to wear pants. Your adventure at the MyBookie Casino begins today with a generous sign-up bonus using promo code TOC for Talk of Champions, TOC. That's promo code TOC to secure yourself a sweet deposit bonus. And that's not all, because their revamped loyalty program ensures that you'll be showered with rewards, including free spins, cashback offers, and a host of exclusive VIP perks. The more you play, the more you win. Play anytime, anywhere with the MyBookie Casino. And make sure to check out MyBookie for all your gaming needs at www.mybookie.ag. That's www.mybookie.ag. College football is just around the corner. Kids going back to school. Summer, for all intents and purposes, is coming to a close. But you and your family can go out with a bang with HelloFresh. From chef-crafted seasonal recipes to their new fresh and fit summer menu, with HelloFresh you get farm-fresh, pre-portioned ingredients and seasonal recipes delivered right to your doorstep. Skip trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. That's why it's America's #1 meal kit. HelloFresh wants you to have it all: free time and fresh, tasty food. That's why they take care of the meal planning and deliver the ingredients, so everything you need to whip up a delicious meal arrives right to your door. My family, we try to stay gone during the summer, but those few times we are home, we don't call for delivery. Their fast and fresh recipes are ready in just 15 minutes or less. Plus, HelloFresh is 25% cheaper than takeout. So what are you waiting for? Go to HelloFresh.com/TOC50 and use code TOC50 for 50% off plus free shipping. That's HelloFresh.com/TOC50 and use code TOC50 for 50% off plus free shipping. It's HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit and proud sponsor of Talk of Champions.
Yeah, and that's what's my biggest, if I'm an Ole Miss fan or someone that's supporting the collective, that's my concern is, can this be sustained? Can this be consistent to keep them in that conversation as a top 5, a top 10 collective? And, you mentioned the market and how nationally it's become such, it's what everyone does now. This is how you are successful in college sports. You have to compete on a national level for NIL. for the most part with recruiting, it's always been about the money, whether that was under the table or, in the shadows or bagmen or whatever. Now it's all out in front of everybody. But the Chris Beard angle here is interesting to me because, Lane Kiffin has been super successful at Ole Miss. Last year, they ended the season on a terrible note. They lose, basically lose out to end the year. They win a non-conference game, but just a very disappointing end to the season. Then you hire Chris Beard, who, like I said, took Texas Tech to a national championship, is one of the most respected X's and O's guys in the sport. He says, and this was his quote, "In my opinion, what we do have is enough. It's enough to be competitive. It's enough to win championships. You got to recruit in basketball. Recruiting is paramount in anything, but in basketball, less players, less people on the court. You got to have a more, concise, direct funnel of talent to win, especially at that level." And your conversations with Walker Jones and how they're trying to, I wouldn't say pivot, because obviously they're still going to give to football, but just pivoting to, hey, basketball, we want basketball to be up there as well. What were those conversations like with him and about the first-year head coach?
I think it's just that support, right? We see what Chris Beard has done as a coach. And to your point, that Texas Tech national runner-up finish where they lost to Virginia in overtime, if they had won that game, that may have been as surprising of a meteoric rise, certainly I think in the modern era, if not even longer, right? Maybe not by seed. It was a really, really talented team, but it's like, man, Texas Tech, like they almost won a men's basketball national title. And just, that statement in a vacuum is like, holy cow. And so Chris Beard said yesterday during our telethon, going back to it, he's like, I've seen the NIL support and infrastructure at two different schools, right? Both in Texas. And we saw his very first class, his transfer class at Texas. I think he brought in, I want to say 7 transfers, maybe even more, maybe 8. And these are players that were averaging, 12 to 18 points per game for high major programs. And he brought in 4, 5, 6 of those guys. And I think if you're going to build a modern day roster, especially in the SEC, as that's really grown on the men's basketball side, to your point, there's got to be resources. So he has shown that very, very quickly at multiple stops, he can build a high level winner, a national championship contender. And what he was saying on the telethon is that, what? I'm not worried about what we don't have. I'm more worried about what we do have, what we can do. And he said, what we have is enough. And what Walker has said publicly about the overall funds, who knows the exact breakdown of what goes where and when as far as funding. But when you have roughly 10 million plus to work with, that's a really, really healthy number, as we know that. And I think that as Chris Beard builds this roster through traditional high school recruiting, you mentioned John Bull, and presumably the portal going forward, as many top programs do, that's going to be a really critical piece to building a high-level winner.
Last thing here before we get into kind of the closing statements, if you will, that you had with Walker Jones. Baseball is interesting. You know as well as I know, it's still a niche sport. And it means, pun intended here, I guess, but with the SEC, it just means more is the phrase, but it does for baseball. College baseball in the SEC is different. Schools are forced to care, basically. Outside of Georgia, I think they've made it pretty known that they don't really care. They're good with football. But I mean, Kentucky just did a massive overhaul in their facilities. Tennessee's about to do the same. Vanderbilt's planning on doing one. I mean, you see these cathedrals of stadiums and the influx of money and revenue that is generated from a sport that the rest of the country just doesn't really care. But, Walker talked about that and how they have to be more competitive and to increase spending, if you will, with NIL for baseball. Because, look, LSU changed the game this year. The needle moved. The market has changed with them. They went out and let's call it what it is. They spent money on free agency and put together a juggernaut of a college baseball team and won the national title. Ole Miss basically did it without NIL when they won it all and just got hot. And baseball, it's a different sport. If a team gets hot, they get hot. You saw it years ago when Coastal Carolina did it, Fresno State did it. But what was the vibe with Walker Jones talking about college baseball? Because it's a weird vibe right now with going from a national championship trophy to a couple years you're scratching your head and you're not even making the tournament.
I think the biggest takeaway with talking to Walker about baseball was almost a sense of surprise, right? And going back to Walker's reputation in the industry is that this is someone, right, who's very, very knowledgeable about what's going on. And there was a sense of, wow, these values have increased in baseball. I think there is maybe a trickle down effect from obviously football, men's basketball, but now to some of these, second or third tier sports, NIL can have a real impact. I think, especially in what are known as the equivalency sports, right? Where it's not a full scholarship per se, but if you're getting a partial scholarship, I was talking to Louisville's baseball coach this summer, and he said their whole game plan is, you know what, can we just get you back to even, right? NIL is almost considered, can we pay for the rest of your scholarship, pay for your apartment, pay for your car payment, pay for food? So in some ways, if you have a scholarship limitation in baseball and it's spread across your whole roster, is it NIL maybe less money can actually go further, right? To just make these guys whole and kind of make up that difference to a full scholarship. So to your point, I think there was a bit of a maybe delayed reaction or delayed market reaction for baseball. And I think to your point, we maybe saw that a little bit last off season and then going into last season. And now I think going into, the third year of the NIL era, there's going to be a better feeling out of, okay, this is what NIL means in college baseball.
Yeah, Ole Miss specifically here, as this is an Ole Miss podcast, but yeah, I think the staff is going to take a more, targeted approach with the portal, and it'll be a more concerted effort because recruiting in college baseball is different too with the draft, and so many classes are hit by the draft. You recruit these guys when they're freshmen, sophomores in high school, and then all of a sudden by the time they're a senior, they're throwing 98 and they've got 3,000 RPMs on their ball. So it's just Ole Miss and is not the only school that has to deal with that. There are several programs that lose guys to the draft every year, but that's just the dice roll. And you have to be able to, talent in, talent out, talent in. You gotta get talented guys there. You got to win, and then when they leave, you got to replace them. So, yeah, the portal with college baseball is going to be fascinating. Where it's especially in the SEC with LSU and Arkansas and everybody, Texas A&M, getting a guy like Braden Montgomery out of the portal, who was an all Pac-12 guy, and now he's going to Texas A&M. I mean, that's just a huge jolt in the arm. So the conference is going to continue to lead the way in just another category with NIL, in my opinion. But the last thing I wanted to ask you about when talking about Walker Jones was discussing the collective's alignment with the athletic department, and you mentioned it already with like the live stream they did was on the school's YouTube channel, and the Ole Miss Athletic Foundation has been monumental in the awareness and getting that word out about the collective and everything about the fundraising campaign. But just he used the term three-headed monster, and what were your takeaways from that conversation there?
I think it really showed the benefit of having one clear collective, that there's not some competition among 5 or 7 different groups, is that who's in charge, the school trusts them. It's a professional that has actual industry experience, right? It's not some fanboy, all due respect, who's trying to cosplay as general manager. Like, you have folks that really understand this is how you fundraise, this is how you message, this is how you operate professionally. And I think that's what Walker and the Grove Collective have shown, is that you have a real professional staff there. The school supports them. The athletic foundation supports them. The coaches clearly support them. I mean, as you know, Lane talks as openly about NIL as I'd say any coach in the country, no matter the sport. And I think that there's that alignment. You have some of the school colors and the branding and the logo. Like, there's no confusion. This is the collective of Ole Miss, and I think you're seeing those dividends.
Okay, I'll put you on the spot. Do you think they can get to 3 million in a week?
Oh, no question. No question. Like I said, I told you before we started recording, is that the goal for yesterday was 1 mil, which that alone is impressive. There was a Power 5 collective that I heard over the summer had high 6 figures, like total in the bank. and Ole Miss doubled that in a day. So yeah, sure. I mean, at this point, Zach, like they might be at like what, like 2-2, 2-4, right? And
Yeah.
it's only Tuesday afternoon. So sure, I bet they can get to 3. I know that they had a big gift that kicked in yesterday at like 6 p.m. to clear a
Yeah.
mill, and they somehow found an extra 700 grand between dinner and bedtime last night. So sure, I believe they can hit 3 mil this week.
Like I said, it was remarkable timing. I don't know if you asked him or not. I'll have to text Walker and maybe he'll send me a sunglasses emoji. But the timing of this campaign happening right after they get Kamarion Franklin was pretty awesome. Because you have to think like one of the bigger recruiting wins in Kiffin's tenure at Ole Miss. And look, there's a lot of buzz about this football team. I know some people are saying, the defense is still a mystery, and we don't know what Pete Golding's going to do without Nick Saban's players. But I mean, the talent is there in spades on offense. They've got some new weapons, and I think even with the schedule being tough, they're still. I think they could win 8 or 9 games. So I think the anticipation, the excitement, college football season, like this is week 1. Week 0, whatever you want to call it. There's college football on this week, so that's all that matters. But yeah, I mean, just an all around great idea and just an outstanding job by Walker Jones and the rest of the people at the Grove Collective to do this.
No question. I think as far as timing, maybe there's more behind the scenes, but I think their big goal was, it's the first day of classes. Week 0 is here. Let's hit the ground running. And there's a great quote where Walker said, quote, "It was kind of a crazy day, but that was the magic," right? I can't even imagine the scheduling and the communication to get all these folks on the same page. And I'm sure it's a long day. I'm sure it's a great day, but they made it work. And so to have that as your like the first day of classes and you raise 1.7 and hoping to raise 3+, I mean, that's the way to do it, right?
Yeah. We will see if they can get to 3 million. I mean, I've been busy this morning. I haven't been on Twitter as much to see where they're at. I'm sure they will be doing some announcing on the Grove Collective's Twitter page, and Ole Miss Athletic Foundation will be putting out where they're at. But yeah, just an awesome Monday. Shout out to the Jordan family and Realtree for the big donation. But like I'll tell you this, Andy, there were a lot of people that were starting to perk their ears up when there was some pictures circulating over the weekend of some of the coaches and players that were hanging out with Dickie Scruggs over the weekend. I don't know if you're familiar with Zeus, but just do a quick Google search and you'll see why people were getting excited. But yeah, so big day. You can read all of Andy's work. He had a full conversation with Walker Jones about the Grove Collective. It's on On3.com. You can see it also at omspirit.com, an affiliate of On3. The whole conversation is there. But Andy, we appreciate the time. I know it's been a busy day for you, but we'll do this again soon, man.
Hey, happy to be here anytime, man. Thanks for having me.
That's going to do it for this little special edition of Talk of Champions. Again, thank you to all of our sponsors that make it possible. And specifically remember this weekend, Saturday, August 26th, 12 p.m. Central Time, homefieldapparel.com. The Ole Miss collection will be unveiled. Use promo code TOC23 for 15% off, and you will not be disappointed. It is going to be electric. So that is going to do it for this quick special episode. Thanks to Andy, thanks to On3, and thanks to the Grove Collective and the good folks over there doing work. And we will talk to you all again on the next one.